Greetings, everyone, and welcome to America in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Chief Content Officer at Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. The roller coaster ride that is President Donald Trump's ongoing trade disputes with Canada and the European Union continued this week, with the province of Ontario, Canada, backing off its threats to impose 25% tariffs on U.S.-bound electricity after Trump threatened to double tariffs on Canada. And Trump also said this week he would impose 200% tariffs on European wine and spirits, in retaliation to the tariffs on U.S. alcohol. Joining me to discuss this is Casey Harper, Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief for the Center Square. Casey, our colleague Brett Rowland has been covering the ongoing tariff battles, and I think he's getting really dizzy over it. Tell us more.
Yeah, I think Brett wanted to cover this because it's an important issue. It impacts average taxpayers, which of course is our angle here at the centersquare.com. I'll say that, and it will have an impact on taxpayers, though how much remains to be seen. It's going to shake out in the details, but it's been a kind of a dizzying beat, Dan, because as you kind of alluded to, there's changes almost every day on the tariffs. Now, I think for, American CEOs and for people watching the stock market closely, it's kind of disconcerting. It's worrying to some free market libertarians. It's very concerning because, free trade is basically a theological tenet for many of them, and maybe rightly so, maybe not. But what we're seeing here from Trump is a couple of things. First, Trump is the America First president. I shouldn't have to say that, but I think it's worth saying in this context, because if you're thinking of this purely as economic policy, you're not seeing it from Trump's perspective. You got to remember that Trump has been running for years on how other countries are taking advantage of the U.S. How China is manipulating their currency and doing other different things to take advantage of the U.S., exploiting tax loopholes, which we've also covered at the centersquare.com. For instance, NATO is not paying their fair share of the defense budget. And, Trump even alluded to how Canada doesn't spend any money on defense. They spend like $27 billion a year, I think. But compared to the U.S., that's not very much. They don't spend any on defense, Trump said, because they expect the U.S. to pay for their defense. And so you have to see this tariff issue as part of the broader America First. Other countries are taking advantage of us. And so I think Trump is really resetting the global order. What other countries can expect from us, how much they can expect to benefit from our niceness, our kindness, really, because we are very kind to the world. Even without USA, we're very kind to the world. He's right that many countries are able to invest in their social services and not pay for defense because they're counting on the U.S. And also many of these countries do impose tariffs on us. China has had, different tariffs on us. Random countries, Bermuda has tariffs on us. A lot of people have had tariffs on us before Trump took office. And so there is a lot of chaos here. I think there's reason to be concerned. But when you look at it from the America First perspective, he's resetting the global order. So that's the first thing. And I'll toss it back to you after this, Dan. But, the second is the negotiating tactic. At first, this really seemed to be about getting the things that Trump wanted from other countries like Mexico and Canada protecting the border. But now that it's extended to the EU, I'm not so sure that it's just negotiating tactics anymore. I think we're more in the retaliatory tariff phase, which is where Trump's saying, if you're going to tariff us, we're going to tariff you. And he wants the tariffs to be fair as he sees fair.
Yeah, and it is important to note that President Trump says he's playing a game is not the right term, but this is a long-term negotiation tactic to balance the playing field, so to speak. But it is having real-world effects in the moment. You mentioned the stock market. We've seen some declines in the stock market since these trade battles have been going on. Ontario's threat, but later retracted, to impose 25% tariffs on energy exports to the United States would have had an impact on consumers, particularly in states of Michigan, Minnesota, and New York, who do import some of their electricity from Canada. Heating bill prices would be going up. Other energy prices would be going up for them. Now, they're not going to, but again, this changes on a daily basis. Let's switch focus to the Trump's threats this week to impose tariffs on European wine and spirit imports. He says and this is true, that this is in retaliation or response to the European Union's long-held tariffs on American spirits exported to Europe. So, I mean, there should be some fairness here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most Americans didn't even know these tariffs existed. They, Egypt has tariffs on us over 10%, Morocco, Thailand, Brazil, Pakistan, India, Belize, Ethiopia. I mean, there's more and more. You mentioned the tariffs on spirits. So I think it's not as if the whole world was just having perfect free trade and then Trump got elected and invented tariffs. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. President Joe Biden, he implemented some tariffs. And so I think there's a little bit of hysteria in the media in reaction to this for what Trump's doing. If it stays very targeted, like, we're only going to have tariffs on specific types of alcohol and the tariffs are going to be negotiated over time, I think that the average American consumer is not going to see a big change because of that. If we get entire sweeping tariffs against, everything that comes into certain and out of certain economies, that it will raise prices for Americans. So I will say, Dan, Trump initiated these, tariffs against China. He started at 10% and raised it up to 20% upon taking office. And of course, you know how much stuff we import from China. I mean, it's huge. And he also increased the taxes by removing a tax loophole that China was using to ship goods over here. So he increased the tariffs and the taxes on Chinese goods being shipped here. And in February, inflation decreased. It did not go up. So I don't know. It's hard to know. I mean, all the standard conventional wisdom is this will definitely increase prices, but so far it seems it'll be more complicated than that because the February inflation data looked very good.
Thank you for joining us today, Casey. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.